What if everything you ever wanted depended on something you never wanted? Gabriel has always had it all: money, status, power. But when his father dies, leaving him a billion-dollar inheritance, he discovers that his fortune comes with a price. He has to get married within 6 months. The problem? He doesn't believe in love. He never has. Desperate to keep his inheritance, he makes an unthinkable proposal: a marriage of convenience. The chosen one, Isabella, an ordinary woman, owner of a bookstore on the verge of bankruptcy, who never imagined that a contract could change her life. But what began as a simple agreement soon turns into something dangerous. A kiss that shouldn't have meant anything, a secret buried in the will, and an impossible choice: love or fortune. Fate can be manipulated. But what about the heart? Get ready for an intense story, full of twists and turns and forbidden feelings. Because when money is no longer the prize, what is really worth it? The answer lies where Gabriel least expected it, in Isabella's eyes. And now he has to decide, before it's too late. Gabriel didn't expect to feel anything but boredom as he listened to the reading of his father's will. He was dressed in an impeccable suit, albeit a little disheveled, and drummed his fingers impatiently against the arm of the leather chair in the lawyer's office. For him, this was just a formality before continuing his life of luxury, without ties or obligations. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a meticulous posture, straightened the papers before starting to read. The room was filled with a heavy silence, interrupted only by the sound of the antique clock on the wall. Gabriel sighed, already tired of the performance. Gabriel, in accordance with your father's last will and testament, the vast corporation will be fully transferred into your name, along with all the assets and property attached to it. He already knew that. His father had no other direct heirs, but something in the lawyer's pause made him look up. However, the man continued, turning the page of the document, there is a specific condition for the transfer to take place. Gabriel frowned. Condition? The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Yes. In order to inherit the company and all the assets, you must get married within 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel blinked, trying to absorb the words. He must have heard wrong. I'm sorry, but... What? The lawyer kept his composure. Your father stipulated this clause. If you don't marry within that period, the inheritance will be transferred to another party, as detailed in the annexes to the will. Disbelief turned to anger. Gabriel stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. This is absurd. My father can't force me to get married. The lawyer remained impassive. It was his decision. No marriage, no inheritance. Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, trying to contain the irritation burning inside him. His father had always been a strict, controlling man, but this was something else. A ridiculous imposition, a final blow from beyond the grave. What if I don't accept? He challenged, crossing his arms. In that case, all the assets will go to the VS Foundation, as stipulated in the second clause. Gabriel gritted his teeth. He was not a man who liked to be pressured, and he would definitely not allow the company built by his father, and which was rightfully his, to slip through his fingers because of an absurd condition. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. And who wrote this will? The lawyer handed him a document to sign, not shaken by his outburst of fury. Your father himself, in his lifetime 2 years ago. He made it clear that this was his last will. Gabriel took the paper and looked at the coldly printed words. Each line was a reminder that his fate had already been mapped out without him having any control over it. But he wouldn't lose. He wouldn't give up. If he had to get married to keep his inheritance, then he would find a solution. 6 months. That was the deadline. He left the office determined, already drawing up a plan. He didn't believe in love. He never had. But marriage was just a contract, and contracts could always be negotiated. Isabella ran her fingers along the shelves of the bookstore, feeling the dust accumulate in the corners of the old wooden shelves. That place was all that remained of her mother, the only link she had to the stories that had shaped her. But with each passing day, reality became crueler. The bills were overdue. Suppliers no longer delivered without advance payment. The bank had issued its final notice before seizing the property. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find a solution, but the truth was that there was no way out. The sound of the doorbell announced the entrance of a customer. Isabella raised her head, forcing a professional smile, but her expression soon closed as she recognized the man crossing the bookshop. Gabriel. His name was synonymous with wealth and arrogance, often featured in business and gossip magazines. Tall, imposing, with cold eyes that analyzed everything as if he already knew the price of everything. "Can I help you?" asked Isabella, crossing her arms. Gabriel smiled, as if the answer was irrelevant. "Actually, I think I'm the one who can help you." She arched an eyebrow, suspicious. "What do you mean?" He took a quick glance around the room before answering. "I know your bookshop is about to close. Debts, right?" His frankness caught her off guard, and her first reaction was defensive. "That's none of your business." Gabriel put his hands in his pockets calmly, as if he'd expected that answer. But it could be. The silence stretched between them. Isabella felt a growing discomfort, as if she were facing someone who was playing a game whose objective she didn't yet know. "What do you want?" she finally asked. He didn't hesitate. "A wedding." She blinked, certain she had heard wrong. "What?" "I need to get married in 6 months, and you need money." She let out an incredulous laugh. "You're kidding, right?" "I'm not kidding, it's a deal. We get married, you get the money you need, and when it's all over, we get on with our lives." Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. This was madness. This isn't a business contract, it's a marriage. On paper, yes, but in practice it doesn't have to be. She pressed her lips together, thoughts racing through her mind. The proposal was absurd. And yet, desperation whispered that it might be the only chance to save her bookshop. "I'm not that kind of person," he said, shaking his head. Gabriel tilted his head slightly. "What kind of person?" "Someone who marries for money." He smiled, as if he knew something she didn't. "And I'm not someone who marries for love. That makes the proposal perfect, don't you think?" Isabella didn't answer. Her heart was beating too hard, and for the first time she found herself at a loss for words. Gabriel waited for a few seconds before speaking again. "Think about it." And then he turned and left, leaving Isabella's mind in absolute chaos. Silence hung over the room as Isabella stared at the contract spread out in front of her. The paper seemed heavier than it should have been, as if it carried the weight of all the wrong choices she could make. Gabriel was sitting on the other side of the table, as calm as ever. He twirled the pen between his fingers, waiting patiently for his answer. There was no rush, no pressure. It was as if he already knew what she would decide. "If I sign this, what happens then?" Isabella asked, her voice sounding firmer than she felt inside. Gabriel put his pen down on the table. "We get married. We keep up appearances for as long as it takes, and after 6 months we go our separate ways. You'll have the money to pay off your debts, and I'll have my inheritance guaranteed." Isabella bit her lip. The agreement looked simple on paper, but something inside her told her that it wouldn't be as easy as it seemed. "What if one of us wants to quit before the 6 months are up?" she asked. Gabriel interlaced his fingers on the table, his eyes locked on hers. "It's not going to happen. I always keep my agreements." His confidence was disconcerting. It was as if he was convinced that everything would go exactly to plan. "What about the rules?" Isabella insisted. "We need to set limits." Gabriel nodded. "Of course, this is a contract of convenience, not a real relationship. No emotional involvement. No expectations beyond what was agreed." Isabella felt a tightness in her chest when she heard that. "No emotional involvement," she repeated, as if she needed to remind herself. Gabriel pushed the pen towards her. "Are you ready to sign?" She hesitated for a moment. Her mind was screaming at her to put down that pen and walk away. But then she thought of the bookstore, of her promise to her mother to keep it open, the desperation of having no other way out. Swallowing hard, he picked up the pen and signed. The contract was closed. The wedding was quickly arranged. No ceremony, no romance. Just a bureaucratic event to make official what was, in essence, just a business contract. On the morning of the wedding day, Isabella faced her reflection in the mirror, feeling a different weight on her shoulders. The dress was simple but elegant. Her heart, however, was a mess. She knocked on the door before entering the office where Gabriel was waiting for her. He turned when he heard her, and for a brief moment, his eyes swept her figure from top to bottom. "Are you ready?" he asked, no emotion in his voice. Isabella took a deep breath. "As ready as I can be." He nodded and offered his arm. She hesitated before taking it. Not because she was nervous about the ceremony, but because she knew that from that moment on, everything would change. The justice of the peace was waiting. A few words were said, vows that meant nothing were exchanged. When the ceremony was over, they were officially married. Gabriel turned to her, his gaze appraising. "From now on, we are man and wife. At least, to the world." She just nodded, unable to say anything. The contract was signed. The wedding had taken place. Now all that remained was to find out what would happen next. Gabriel had never been a man to show affection, but now, married, even if only on paper, he needed to play a convincing role. That night's dinner was a crucial event for Vast Corporation. It was his first public appearance alongside Isabella as husband and wife. He entered the hall of the luxury hotel with the naturalness of someone who has always belonged to that world, but he felt the weight of Isabella beside him. She was wearing an elegant navy blue dress that highlighted her delicate features. She looked impeccable, but the tension on her face showed her discomfort. "Relax," Gabriel murmured, leaning slightly towards her. "The more natural we look, the fewer questions they'll ask." She let out a discreet sigh. "Easy for you to say. Faking feelings seems to be a talent of yours." He smiled. "And you need to learn fast." As they mingled with the guests, Gabriel kept his pose. He introduced Isabella as his wife, with irritating ease, while she struggled to keep up. The evening went without a hitch until one of the company's older investors, a grey-haired man with a shrewd eye, smiled at Gabriel. "I never thought you'd get married, young man. Your wife must be someone very special to make a man like you commit." Gabriel cracked a calculated smile and pulled Isabella closer. "I was just lucky to find her." The man's gaze fell on Isabella, and she felt the expectations around her rise. "And how did you meet?" he asked, interested. Isabella opened her mouth, but hesitated. Gabriel noticed and intervened before the silence became suspicious. "It was one of those unlikely meetings. Something that seemed like fate," he said, lightly squeezing her hand. The touch caught Isabella off guard. Her heart raced for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "Yes, it was unexpected," she added, smiling softly. The investor laughed. "Ah, love is always like that, and you look so good together." Gabriel kept smiling, but noticed that Isabella looked away. She wasn't used to lying, and that was obvious. Dinner went on without further incident, until a journalist approached with a camera. "Sir, a photo of the couple?" Gabriel nodded, pulling Isabella closer. She stiffened for a second, but soon felt his hand slide around her waist. The pose was calculated, rehearsed, but when the photo was taken, Gabriel felt something different in the way his body reacted to hers. Before he could process it, the journalist laughed. "It looks like we have a couple in love here, but I think a kiss would make the photo even better." The request took Isabella by surprise. "What?" Gabriel had expected something like this. Without hesitating, he gently held her face and shortened the distance between them. The plan was simple, a quick, convincing kiss just to keep up appearances. But the moment their lips touched, everything changed. The electricity of the contact made his heart skip a beat. The heat of the kiss wasn't just acting. Gabriel realized too late that something was wrong. And from the stunned look on Isabella's face when they pulled away, she felt the same way. He cleared his throat, regaining his posture. "Was that convincing enough?" he murmured. Isabella looked away, straightening her dress. "It was just part of the deal, nothing more." Gabriel nodded, but felt an unknown discomfort inside, because for the first time he wasn't sure if it was true. Gabriel couldn't get dinner out of his mind. The kiss, the way Isabella's body responded to his. It shouldn't have meant anything, but for some reason it felt different, more real than anything he was willing to admit. Trying to push the uncomfortable thoughts away, he locked himself in the mansion's office to review old company documents. He needed to distract himself, but the pile of papers soon became irrelevant when he found something unexpected. A wooden box, tucked away in a drawer he rarely opened. He recognized his father's stamp and, with a mixture of curiosity and hesitation, opened it. Inside, she found letters, handwritten letters. Her chest tightened as she recognized the handwriting. It was from his father. He picked up the first one and began to read. "Gabriel, if you're reading this, it means you've already discovered the clause in the will. I know you must be furious with me, and I don't blame you, but before you hate me, I need you to understand why." He frowned, turning the page. "I've made mistakes. Your mother and our marriage was consumed by greed, by the expectations we placed on each other. In the end, I realized too late that money was never enough. I saw the love we once had lost because we were obsessed with power. I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did." Gabriel felt a tightness in his chest. His father had never been one to talk about feelings, and now, from beyond the grave, he was trying to teach him a lesson. "You always had everything, Gabriel, but you never knew the value of what really matters. I hope that with this marriage you'll understand that there are things that money can't buy. If you learn that, then my decision will have been worth it." He dropped the letter on the table, taking a deep breath. The anger he had felt at the beginning, when he discovered the clause in the will, was still there, but now mixed with something different. A doubt. Was his father right? The next morning, Gabriel found Isabella in the kitchen. She was making coffee, concentrating on something on her cell phone. When she noticed him, she looked up. "You don't usually wake up so early," she said in surprise. "I couldn't sleep," he replied, grabbing a cup and pouring himself a cup of coffee. There was silence for a moment. Gabriel observed Isabella, noticing details he hadn't noticed before. The way she bit her lips slightly when she was thinking. The way her eyes sparkled when she found something funny on her cell phone screen. He pushed the thoughts aside and sniffled. "I need to ask you something." Isabella arched an eyebrow. "What?" Gabriel hesitated before speaking. "Do you believe that love is worth more than money?" She laughed, shaking her head. "Is that a serious question?" He didn't smile. "Yes." Isabella's laughter died down and she frowned. "I think love and money are two things that shouldn't be in the same equation. Love is something you feel, not something you buy or trade." Gabriel remained silent, digesting her words. She sighed, taking a sip of her coffee before continuing. "If you're asking this, it's because you have doubts about this ridiculous contract we've made, isn't it?" He didn't answer, just looked away. Isabella let out a sigh. "Be careful, Gabriel. If you start questioning what really matters, you may end up discovering that money was never the main prize." He didn't know how to answer, because perhaps for the first time in his life, he was beginning to understand. Isabella noticed the change in Gabriel even before he admitted it. Small gestures, longer looks than necessary, silences full of meaning. Something inside him was changing, but he resisted. And so did she. She knew she couldn't allow herself to feel anything. This marriage was a contract, nothing more. But the problem was that her heart didn't understand the difference between an agreement and reality. One evening, while she was going over reports from the bookshop in the living room, she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to find Gabriel standing in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of wine. "You look tense," he said, holding out a glass to her. Isabella hesitated before accepting. Running a business in crisis does that to a person. He sat down next to her on the sofa, saying nothing for a moment. He just swirled the wine in his glass thoughtfully. "Do you regret it?" he asked suddenly. She frowned. "For what?" "Accepting that deal." Isabella laughed dryly. "Every day." Gabriel let out a sigh, but there was a trace of a smile at the corner of his lips. "That hurts to hear." "You asked?" she replied. The silence stretched between the two of them. It was one of those moments when no words seemed necessary. Only each other's presence filled the space. Isabella looked away, concentrating on the wine. "Have you ever loved anyone, Gabriel?" she asked, without thinking too much. He remained motionless. "Love has never been a priority for me." "Because you don't believe that, right?" He hesitated before answering. "Because it never made sense to me." She shook her head, laughing softly. "What a sad life." He arched an eyebrow. "Do you believe in love?" "Yes, I do. But I also know that love can be a trap." Gabriel tilted his head. "What do you mean?" She sighed, twirling the glass between her fingers. "My mother fell in love with my father when she was still young. He was a dreamer, someone who promised worlds and depths, but in the end, he left her, alone, with me in this bankrupt bookshop." Gabriel remained silent. "Love destroyed my mother," Isabella continued, "and I promised myself that I would never let that happen to me." Gabriel's eyes shone with something undefined. "So we're in the same boat." She laughed lightly. "Maybe we are." Another silence. Another look held for too long. And that's when it happened. Gabriel raised his hand, as if to touch her face, but hesitated halfway. Isabella noticed. She felt her breath catch, because for a moment she wished he would continue, but he didn't. Gabriel pulled his hand away and let out a low, almost self-deprecating laugh. "That wasn't in the contract, was it?" Isabella forced a smile. "Definitely not. And yet, there they were, stuck in